Today's conversation is on faith in the unseen reality in relation to self-persuasion. We're going to tie it into the conversations that we've been having about state akin to sleep, which we refer to as Theta, state of mind, which is a drowsy state prior to going to sleep. It's not always a state prior to going to sleep, because we can slip into Theta all throughout the day. Children, as we've been discussing, have the ability to experience Theta as they find themselves lost in their imagination, daydreaming. It is during these moments that their inner world is being revealed, and they're understanding it, although they might not be able to articulate it in words, in ways that we now understand as we've been working with this information. They're revealing how they want to express their desires. One of the things that we'll notice when it comes to children is their unwavering, lighthearted conviction in their visions. It is during these stages of their development that they haven't formed the limiting interpretations, the limiting beliefs in relation to their vision. Now, as we continue on this journey, some of us might begin to identify with those limiting beliefs and interpretations, and to begin to live from those perspectives. So, for some of us, it may be harder to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, live in faith in relation to the vision. So Neville presented to us this idea of state akin to sleep, which is discussed all throughout deep mystical information that seems to point to this same idea, that there is a point where we can bypass the overthinking, overcritical, certain interpretation bundle of mental chatter and work with the subconscious in a mindful way. It's an opportunity to let go of what we talked about in the last video, in which I referred to the book, which I love to personally go through if I ever find myself in a position of identifying with certain beliefs that seem to hold me back, and the holding back is from within in relation to the beliefs. The book is called The Quantum Leap Strategy by Price Pritchett. All I do, if I find myself trapped mentally, which is revealed via the inner resistance of reactivity or unnecessary tension, to the degree where I feel immobilized or overwhelmed by doubt, is pick up a copy of the book and read it cover to cover. The way the book has been articulated stimulates my imagination in a way that reveals what I want to do next. And the thing that I do, which is stimulated from imagination, releases me from that self-imposed bondage of certain loops of thinking that seem to cause me to remain in stagnation. It's a form of letting go, and they have a chapter in that book, very short read, called Suspend Disbelief. Now, Abraham Lincoln actually brings this up. He said, "To believe in the things you can see and touch is no belief at all. But to believe in the unseen is a triumph and a blessing." So very much related to what Neville speaks of, which is loyalty to the unseen reality. That's his definition of faith, as we've been discussing. Abraham Lincoln says, to believe in the unseen as triumph and a blessing. So we're working with imagination, and in state akin to sleep, or any kind of experience that we have on the day-to-day journey, such as after a meditation, or certain flow-based activities that we do, we can slip into this state akin to sleep, in which we have very profound inner voice conversations, revelations, insights, and perspectives. One of the commitments that I made on my journey, and I've shared the story before, was when I was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And by the way, I'm going again, which I'm excited to do at the end of August for vacation. I was there in 2017, and I reflected back on my life, and I said, when was I the most effective? When was I in my most peak of performance in relation to the different attributes of the journey? For me, a big part of it was entrepreneurship. Even in communication, in relationships, when was I the most as parallel as Neville refers to living in the end, knowing that what I desired to see to be brought forth was going to be brought forth? It was when I was in a state of flow, which I had learned conceptually from the book Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And then I understood even deeper upon practice and working with that information. Experience is the key that helps us combine that knowledge into wisdom and understanding. And so upon reflection, I realized that even looking back at some of my reports, because some of you might know I like to track things, KPIs, spreadsheets, things like that are very important to me because it allows me to look back and actually see my progress and actually look for indicators of where my progress had accelerated, where the results multiplied. And what I had found upon analyzing this data was it was when I was in this state of flow and maintained this flow. And while there are different levels of flow, there's something that is more of a peak flow, something that I experience when I speak publicly in front of an audience. And then there's more of a baseline or a day-to-day lighthearted flow, something that I experience when maybe I go for a walk. Now, this is called alpha state, and this is very closely related to theta state. And through this process, we can slip into theta state, which brought me into a very interesting realization. Neville, before he became a person that communicated about the law and the promise and speaking about interpretations from the Bible in a way that wasn't really articulated as often, he was a dancer. And he was in the performing arts in a way that he submerged himself with the experience. He knew about flow. He could slip into state akin to sleep and lose himself in the performance. He can go into deep stages of flow, and others would comment about how his body would move while he dances. And this is very apparent in how he communicates as he communicates the information relayed in his recordings and in his writings. The relationship is very profound. Those that are able to maintain flow tend to have these kinds of spontaneous creative expressions in which he can believe in the possibility of the unseen reality. Children do this. So upon reflection, when I look back at my experiences in 2017, and I realized that flow was the way, I made a commitment from that day onwards that I was going to find what brings me into flow and maintain my flow. And I knew that as I continue on this journey, everything would continuously improve in my life, as it has. Relationships, business, the creative expression through the videos that I make here on this channel, helping others. Whatever it is that we do, we start to infuse the spirit of who we really are in it. And this idea of flow is something that we want to go deeper in. And while we're in flow, that we can also slip into theta. But also, while we are in flow, alpha and theta, we seem to automatically suspend this disbelief. So a handful of weeks ago, I decided to book a flight to Los Angeles, which where I'm going to be for the first 2 weeks in August. And one of the things that I noticed is I felt inner resistance to booking the flight. I started to come up with all these stories of why I shouldn't go. It revealed to me right then and there that I was not in flow. Because as we've been discussing, what you desire desires you back. What you want wants you back. And what I realized was I was stuck in a pattern, which for the last year and a half, because I stayed in a certain place, and mind you, I still managed to find my flow in it. I also realized that by staying in this place that I was staying for a year and a half for myself, I was going to remain stagnant. Now, this is a realization that is very personal to me. So part of the journey of finding your flow and knowing yourself is just that, know thyself. And what ends up happening is you have the psychological tool, whether it be imagination or working with an affirmation or watching a video like this, which is a psychological conversation, or reading a book like the Quantum Leap Strategy. It results in you taking the step in the right direction, or something changes to start to move towards your vision. So right then and there, I needed to book the flight. I knew I had to book it. And after booking it, that's when things started to change for me. I started to feel more flow. And it was based on this commitment that I made in 2017. Now, I have many stories like that. We have to remember that there's a chance that we could slip into a state of stagnation, overthinking, stuck in our head. And we want to understand the idea of possibility. And it was stated really well in Mark 9:23. As Jesus said unto him, If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. So let's go a little deeper into this, related to what Neville has been sharing with us, related over to what Abraham Lincoln said. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. The word we want to zone in on is possible. That's something that we want to deeply identify with. Possibility is closely related to faith. When we find ourselves in a state of mind, or in a conversation, or some kind of activity that is flow-based, we start to reveal the possibilities like a child would. So what does Neville say about disbelief? He says, when it happens, you will tell it, as everyone in whom it happens tells it, and you will meet with the same response. Some will believe you, and some will disbelieve you. Don't make any effort to force those who disbelieve you to believe you, to try to suppress opinions which you do not share. You will find it far less profitable than to tolerate them. So they don't believe you, so you don't try to persuade them. You simply leave them. You do not share their disbelief, for you've had the experience. So you leave them just as they are. And so what happens is, if there's disbelief or doubt within ourselves, it can play out as theater and conversations that we have with others, interactions that we have with others, even information that we consume from others that seems to validate or affirm that doubt within ourselves. The way to overcome this is to remain loyal to the vision, is to make your ideal state of mind in relation to your vision a priority. And he also states, because of his disbelief, man sees the power as foolishness. So Paul told us in Corinthians, since in the wisdom of God, man did not by wisdom know God, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. And that you are called upon to do is listen to the eternal story of salvation and believe by responding to it. Then go about your business by using your power to cushion the blows of life. And when it pleases God, you will be saved. It's through faith. This is something that has been discussed in all faith traditions. Faith, loyal to the vision, is a way to bring forth our vision in ways that we might not consciously be aware of. Certainly on the journey, as you bring forth your results, your vision, you will start to be able to go back in certain experiences in life and connect the dots looking backwards and find the way that you did it. Then what we do is we take it. And a lot of times, individuals put this in a book or a training or something and teach it to others. And a way is revealed to a destination. Some follow the process step by step. What Neville is referring to is the way of the performing artist. There's a structure, a way of performing. But there's also a very free-spirited part of it that is allowed to express, that during the performance is revealed. One of the things that I love, and I've always loved in life, now I embrace it a lot more, is to observe theater or to observe performing art. Because what I see in there, I now understand to a deeper degree, in that there's a performance, and there's a structure, and there's a script. And you'll notice that the performance also has improv in it, that no matter what shows up in the performance, if the other performers were not in sync, others who were performing would find a way to bring it back into sync again. That's because they were in flow. They weren't reacting that the other performer didn't say the line in the most ideal way, or didn't do the body gesture in a way that was rehearsed, let's say, thousands of times. They find a way to improvise and make it seem so natural that the audience experiences it as a perfectly orchestrated performance. That is because the person is lighthearted. The individual is open to the possibilities. They have let go of the rigidity of mind. And this letting go of rigidity of mind allows us to be more in the now. And being more in the now, which is also related to flow, allows us to let go of this disbelief. And you may slip into theta. We don't know it, unless you maybe measure it. And then you get an insight on what move you have to make. So you do a performance, or you do a speech, or you have a conversation with somebody. And you kind of know what to say. You have an outline, very common in sales. We call it sales script. But those that are very proficient at sales can go off the script in a way that actually facilitates the sale, leads to the decision. That's because they have the experience and the principles that govern everything. When Neville spoke, and to understand the information that he had conveyed, one has to go through the experiences and live the philosophy every day. Because then when you go back to, and you've heard me say this many times, the same information, you unravel another meaning. For example, let's reflect upon this quote here. He states, although your power here is like a little firecracker compared to your real power, when you know what you want and believe you have it, your power of belief will make it so. Again, we're talking about the possibility. Construct a scene which implies the fulfillment of your desire. Give it all the sensory vividness you are capable of giving, and rest in the knowledge that its implication is the power to bring your desire into your world. So as a child, or when we're in states of flow, we embrace and we are inspired by our experiences as we integrate. I call this integration 5 sensory to the 6th sense. Spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. It's one. Integration, deep integration. It's easier to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is easier to assume something and say it's done. We call this self-confidence. However, if we have challenges with this, we can observe where we're too much in the beta state of mind. Beta is important because it requires us to think. Different states of mind for different parts of the journey. But your real power is stored within the subconscious. It's the ways that you're going to bring forth that you're not consciously aware of yet, and is related to the infinite realm of the inner world, as we've been discussing from Charles Haanel's book, The Master Key System, in which he refers to it as the world within being infinite in nature. He says you don't have to be a brilliant scholar to use your creative power. In fact, the more brilliant you are, the less you are likely to try it. And why would he say something like that? Again, we have to go back to what we learned, or what, more accurately put, we knew as children. Loyalty to the vision, unwavering lighthearted conviction, that contributed to such a high degree of self-persuasion at that point. We didn't know the difference between you can do this and you can't do it. They go down the pathway automatically to their vision, and they're guided from within, as long as they're nurtured and supported by their environment, or they do it within themselves in some shape or form. He says, but I know the power of imagining, for I have sat quietly in my chair in my living room, constructed a scene which implied the fulfillment of my desire, gave it all the qualities of the naturalness, so that it felt right and let it be. So that it felt right and let it be. That's the key distinction. Feels right. You're one with it. Assume it is done, as he calls it, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and let it be. Then, just as I would drop a seed into the ground and wait for its maturity, my seed of desire matured and fulfilled itself in my world. Imagine whatever you desire. Believe you will receive it, and go about your business in the world with patience and confidence, knowing your desire will erupt and become a reality. So Neville has a very poetic way of describing things. These are the inspired conversations, because I felt that as I was going through his information, and I continue to go through it, he's very childlike in his way of articulating. There's a high degree of self-confidence and self-persuasion that is demonstrated in his articulations. And also, if we would have happened to have caught one of his performances when he was a dancer, I'm sure we would have seen the parallels in there. That's why when a person creates success or brings forth a vision in one area in which they assume mastery in that particular skill or that profession, it's easier for them to transfer that mastery into another area, such as communication skills. This was something that was discussed in Mastery by Robert Greene. So what we want to do is suspend this disbelief. And you can suspend a disbelief by maintaining the flow, the ideal state of mind, because there is no disbelief there, or there's very little. And if there is, you may slip into Theta and get the ideal insight or perspective right there and there to help you release from that disbelief, which was my experience that I've been having since 2017 when I committed to the flow. Now, prior to that, I produced success in different areas of my life. However, I was doing it more from a place of force. And there was also experiences where I was producing success, but I was also doing it from a place of flow. What I found was the flow way of doing it was a lot more natural, a lot more at ease. I had a lot more of the unknown mystical experiences that brought forth the results. Somehow I knew to talk to the right person. Somehow I ended up in the right place in the right time. But when I did it from a place of force, I would overthink everything, every last detail, to the point where I was so attached to a certain way of doing things that if it didn't work out, I would get frustrated and give up. So we want to really understand this flow state of mind. So we want to read books like Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and also another book, The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler. And we want to understand and value this Theta state, because this is a way of getting into the subconscious with our vision or our affirmation or self-talk, and also certain information that's received while we're in Theta, which is also very fascinating, which I believe is a state of mind those that have drawn spiritual information from within have gone into, whether they knew of it or not. Maybe they called it different things, like Neville called it state akin to sleep. So what we want to do is we want to understand this Theta state of mind, and we want to access it, and we want to make sure that we can access it as needed. This was a deeper realization that I had, which synchronistically so brought me to Neville's information, which revealed the state akin to sleep. We always say this, the answers are always in front of our face. We only need to reflect deep enough to really understand what is being communicated to us via the outer world, read and understood from within, guided from within. And that guidance is a lot of times found in the state akin to sleep, or alpha state of mind, which is flow. So I realized that being in flow, which is more alpha, is how to live. It's the day-to-day life, and there's different levels of flow. And then if I had disbelief, I would go through a process that would slip me into Theta. For me, the book, The Quantum Leap Strategy, slips me into Theta. How do I know? Because all of a sudden, after going and reading the book, I get an idea and I know what to do, and I automatically do it. Some way, somehow. Also, what slips me into Theta is a meditation. I get my best insights and perspectives from meditation. Also, what slips me into Theta is the natural way before going to sleep that Neville refers to, which traditionally this is where many of us pray or engage in spiritual conversation with the divine, and also work with our subconscious to bring forth our vision. So we want to understand it. Theta activity has a frequency of 3.5 to 7.5 hertz, and is classed as slow activity. It is seen in connection with creativity, intuition, daydreaming, and fantasizing, and is a repository for memories, emotions, and sensations. Theta waves are strong during internal focus, meditation, prayer, and spiritual awareness. So internal focus, meditation, prayer, spiritual awareness. It is the state between wakefulness and sleep in which we can communicate with our subconscious mind. Now, as I'm sharing this, I recommend reflecting on your experiences, like I did in 2017, and ask yourself, where were you the most effective? Where were you the most confident? Where did you feel that nothing can hold you back from what you desire to see brought forth? Usually we'll track it back to when we were children. However, we've also had these experiences as adults. And once we affirm that this is what was going on, we subconsciously take that in and begin to live from that perspective and make this a way of life. And so some of us might require some thinking information, like the information that's being discussed here, to help fuse it together. Accurate thinking plus intuitive understanding fused as one. Because perhaps there's still a part in our brain that wants to theoretically understand it. Although I will say that experience is one of the best teachers. So the more you put it into practice, the more effective you become at it, the better you're able to work with it, the more you know thyself, and thus further release from limiting, disempowering interpretations, beliefs, etc., about yourself in relation to others, in relation to your vision, and so forth, as we've been discussing. So again, in this theta state, intuitive, creative, fantasy, imagery, creative, dreamlike, and drowsiness, oneness, and knowing. Those that are in the performing arts may slip into theta, although I believe that they maintain alpha very often, ensuring that they maintain consistency with their script or the architecture of the performance. If you listen to Neville's conversations, if you listen to his lectures, you will notice the moments where he slips into theta and seems to draw out information from the depths of his subconscious and articulates in a way that seems so poetic and deep and mystical, yet it has a deep impression on our subconscious. We transform in mind while he's in the state. Again, the same is to be said while you're in the performing arts or doing any kind of art and in entrepreneurship, because I believe that entrepreneurship is a fusion between the arts and sciences, which, by the way, is tracking back to the origins of alchemy. In entrepreneurship, it's a combination of the arts and sciences. There's art to innovation as well as the structure to innovation. You create a product or service, it's functional, it performs, it's consistent. However, there's aesthetics to it, there's art to it, there's a way that inspires people. You go to a nice restaurant and it's set up a certain way, and they have certain kinds of music. You sit down and they pour you a glass of wine, and you enjoy the whole experience, the conversation that you have with whoever you're with, the light ambient music, the dim lights, the scenery through the window. Perhaps it's overlooking an ocean or boating docks. And this entire experience is something that was orchestrated by the one that put it together, the entrepreneur. And they set it all up so that you would have this experience in there. They included elements of art as well as elements of science to create the experience. We start to, even as we have that experience, slip into somewhat of a trance-like state, which is very related to a state akin to sleep. Trance is a state of semi-consciousness, so they stimulate the imagination in the performance, in that particular experience that they've consciously orchestrated so that you would have it in that restaurant. Again, this kind of reflection for me started to happen more so as I committed in 2017 to that journey of just identifying what was bringing me into flow, what was bringing me into these states of consciousness, what kind of stimulus is in my imagination and outer world experiences, and understanding, correlating. And this whole process is about knowing thyself, which is why I recommend journaling and understanding how Neville refers to certain desires when imagined stimulate you into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. to go a little deeper into this and to understand how we slip into theta or any kind of trance-based induced state in which we are highly receptive and suggestive, in which we can work with it consciously to release from the disbelief or the disempowering programming and limiting beliefs. And if you're a student of my subconscious mind program, then you'll know why when I communicate affirmations a certain way, I do it a certain way, because the conversation is more of a storytelling experience, or the affirmation is more of an inner dialogue storytelling experience, which stimulates the subconscious and bypasses the overthinking mind. So we got auditory, kinesthetic, visual, olfactory, gustatory. So storytelling, audio storytelling, can slip us into a trance-like state. Certainly I've had those experiences when I listen to Neville speak. Kinesthetic, driving through a sense of feeling and movement, dance or breath work. For me, I get into this trance-like state or a theta-based state as I engage with nature. Then we have photo or visual storytelling or art or performing art. Some of my best inspiration I receive where I went to go watch some theater or some performing arts. Olfactory, scent, gustatory, taste. Even there's areas we want to understand that seem to infuse certain ways of thinking, such as traumatic situations. It's important that we guard our subconscious. And if you have children or you work with children, that you guard their subconscious. Very important. Also occurs in dreams, lucid dreams, feelings of euphoria and ecstasy. So to bring this into a summary, we want to go back to what was shared here from these two quotes, again from Abraham Lincoln. To believe in things you can see and touch is no belief at all, but to believe in the unseen is a triumph and a blessing. And then what Jesus said, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. So we want to believe in possibility. And it is easier to believe in that possibility while we're in state akin to sleep, while we're in theta, while we're in flow, automatically. Perhaps the overthinking about it creates more reasons of why it can't happen. So we want to release from it to allow the suggestion to seep in. And when we do that, we'll notice that we'll automatically let go of this disbelief, or as discussed in our last video, suspending the disbelief in relation to what was shared in the quantum leap strategy. So for me, when I look back at why does the quantum leap strategy or certain books bring me into certain states of mind, it's the way the words were put together in sequence that stimulates a feeling that brings us into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So let's conclude this with an affirmation then. You can say, I realize that I have the ability to slip into a state of awareness where I can self-persuade myself to anything that I desire to become. What I desire to become desires me back. Therefore, I am. What I want also wants me back because I know it within myself. As I know it within myself, I'm more in flow. As I maintain my flow, I get further insights and perspectives revealed within. Through the process, I go down the journey of knowing myself even more, understanding myself even more. And as I continue down this journey of understanding myself, I let go of certain thinking that is not in harmony with my vision. And I'm able to maintain this more so each day as I move towards my vision from a place of flow. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.